Hi everyone. My name is Alexandra, but you might know me on Farcaster as Gugusha and on other social media. Um, my crypto story is crazy. I kind of get exposure to the space back in 2016. So my background is in computer science, and I was on the second year of university. And like, frankly speaking, I'm quite good in mathematics, but absolutely terrible coder. So computer science classes were not the most interesting for me, but I got really, really smart classmates. And back in the day, they got excited about this like new technology called blockchain. And in the country where I come from, there is a lot of like really good devs. So just naturally by hanging out with my like classmates, I started learning about crypto space and the idea of like decentralization and freedom to transact. It's something that was always permanent for me, and I was really happy to learn about these things, but kind of not forced. It was more of the gentle exposure. And we went to a few meetups in my local city. And then at some point, I was like, okay, there is no point for me to just like keep focusing on studies. And I might rather do something else and look for a job. But it should be something that I can do in parallel with actual studies. So back in the day, Telegram chats, like crypto cabals, that was how it was working. And in one of the groups, I saw that one of the companies was hiring a like marketing intern, and I pretty much just messaged the founder. It was back in 2017, and he was like, okay, do you know anything about crypto? I was like, yeah, I know how blockchain works more from the technical perspective. And that was right after this like crazy ICO boom. So the like casino cycle was just about to start. Not a lot of people were like really deep in the industry. So I guess my interview process was like really simple. And another question was that like, okay, can you speak English? Luckily, I was learning English in school, and it's not my first language, but I had like decent level of speaking English, so I was hired. And for the next 6 years, I was pretty much working in like payment app, more on the like marketing slash product side, like crypto marketplace, in like briefly in an exchange, briefly in an investment fund. So all these different roles in different companies gave me an understanding of like, okay, what I actually want to do, and second, what problems I want to work on. And also it was like really interesting in terms of crypto cycles and going through like bull market, bear market, another bull market, DeFi summer, then another bear market. But I also lived briefly, I mean, not that briefly, in Australia for like 4 years. And currently I'm based in Paris. So in 2000, no, wait, I'm so bad with numbers. It's like 2022,
Yep.
I moved to Paris because of like a previous company that I used to work for made me an offer, and they had a head of office in Paris. So they were the one, okay, would you want to move from Melbourne to Paris? And I moved, joined a ZK company, worked with them for another like 8 months, also very deep into crypto. There I was more the like head of community role, and that's roughly the time when I joined Farcaster. I think I joined when I was still in Australia, but like a few months after moved to Europe. And in a way, when you are in Australia and you are joining like crypto network, nothing really happened like locally because the industry is so small there. But when I moved to Europe, it actually really helped me to find the like my community of people, because in Paris we have like Paris is quite known for crypto devs, especially, and especially in DeFi, because as we know, it's like future of France. But nevertheless, early Farcaster crowd, there was like around 10 people who were already active. And I believe my like second week in Paris, there was some Farcaster meetup where I met a lot of amazing guys, and it gave me sense of belonging, because I only knew my colleagues. I barely know like anyone else. But long story short, kept being active on Farcaster. I didn't work for around like 6 months and took a break between my actual like full-time jobs. And currently I'm working as a like business development slash growth manager at Morpho, which is a lending protocol. But personally, I guess I never had any other job rather than crypto. So
Yeah, it's interesting. You covered a lot of ground, it sounds like, in like six or so years, maybe,
yeah.
just in terms of the number of different like areas within crypto that you worked, and the number of different roles, like from, you know, it sounds like you did some marketing, some product, some biz dev. I don't know if there was like any engineering stops in there, but like community, I think you mentioned head of community at one of these.
Yeah.
And so like seeing lots of different, uh, applications and sort of areas within crypto, and then lots of different roles within crypto companies. And then also it sounds like spending a few years in Australia, now Paris, some geographical differences, especially with Australia being, by my understanding, not very, forward on crypto, not
Yep.
really being a big industry there at all, which I think you said as well. And so I'm curious just to sort of like compare and contrast those. Maybe we could start, both on the types of areas where you plugged in within crypto, what you found that you liked and were bullish on, what you found was kind of maybe personally boring or just not that interesting. And then, what brought you to Australia in the first place, not the first place that you think about people moving to work in crypto.
Yeah, I answer your questions like one by one, from all different roles. And I guess fundamentally coming from a country where, for example, when I need to send right now from Europe money to my parents, the only way I can do it is by sending crypto, because no international like transfer, there is no, easy way for me to open my banking app and send it to them. So also you are never sure if like the money that you have on the bank account are actually safe there, and tomorrow somebody will come to you and say that, okay, there are no more money in your bank. So this, like, again, I probably already mentioned that like freedom to transact and actually using crypto as this like global financial instrument and payment system is something that I deeply care about, and that gives me motivation every single day, because I know why am I working on this problem, and like why am I doing what I'm doing. Through my career, there were a lot of different angles, a lot of different applications. Every single one gave me some like really valuable experience that translated well to my next role. But at some point, like, also because it was quite early in the crypto space in general, especially if we talk about things that I were doing on like in 2017, 2018, it was this like Wild West post ICO era. So people were just like trying to figure out stuff, trying to figure out how to like make a usable wallet, because the only thing that you had, or at least that I was exposed to, was like MetaMask that was like super laggy and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we can all agree. So a lot of my roles back in the day were more of this like experimentation and seeing what could be done. Like some of the projects never took off, but some of them are like still working and doing quite well, but now without me. And yeah, I think that right now the role that I have as a like growth manager at Morpho, and currently it's like third largest protocol on Ethereum. The team is amazing. Everything led me to the place that I enjoy the most. And the company's mission is to build financial infrastructure and make it as a like public good. So I guess that's what I care the most, and that's why I was so excited to join this team. However, everything that I've done in the past was a really, really good learning curve for me. Answering your question about Australia, one of the
Can I
companies that,
can I ask one more just specific
yeah,
question actually in between? You mentioned like sort of being from one of these countries that it's genuinely difficult to like send money back. Like Western Union doesn't work. You can't really trust the funds in your bank account will be in your bank account the next day. Like all of these problems that, for me being like from America, when I was first getting to understand Bitcoin, it took a couple of looks to really start to appreciate it. And the time where it really like clicked for me was this guy, Andreas Antonopoulos, had this talk that he
Yeah.
gave where he was like, it's kind of hard for me to explain Bitcoin to people in America, but I don't have to explain Bitcoin to people in Venezuela because, they've seen hyperinflation. They, people, not just Venezuela, but other countries as well, like they understand the risks of, their bank maybe, basically debanking them and things like this. And, in America, that's just not really something that people have felt personally for the most part, unless you're, criminal or something. And so that was sort of one of the first things that made me start to get interested in Bitcoin. And I'm wondering if, so that same argument for like basically being able to take your hard-earned cash from your job and put it in your bank account and feel that it's going to stay there and not get hyperinflated away. All of those arguments, which were really supportive of Bitcoin back then, now I think of it and I'm like, well, if I was that same person back then, excited about Bitcoin, I would actually be pretty excited about like USDC or just like stable coins. Like I don't need, the appreciation is great, but it comes with risk. And all I really want is like a strong currency. And like today, people talk about inflation in the US and it's a real thing, but it seems unlikely that the dollar is going to be like worthless, in a couple of months. Like it seems like, people from a lot of countries would be very happy holding their bank account in dollars. And so having said, and maybe, 80% dollars and 20% Bitcoin or whatever the split that you want to make it is, like people who are not looking to make tremendous gains, they're just looking to protect the value of their earnings, purchasing power of their earnings. Like it seems like something like USDC could be, a viable alternative these days. So I'm curious in regards to your, the utility you've been getting out of crypto. It sounds like for years of, just simply sending money back to like your family. Was that something where like you were using Bitcoin originally and now you might be using, Ethereum or USDC, or maybe you never use Bitcoin? Like what currency or what currencies have you sent over time and why?
First, I fully understand your point of view, and like through the years, I also spoke with a lot of different people from like different countries, and you can always tell if a person knows how to send USDT on Tron. They most likely come from the country that really use crypto and use it for payments, just because the transaction
Got it.
is so cheap. And like, I mean, it's not a secret. I come from like Eastern Europe, and that's where we know how to use crypto. Same when you talk to people from like Argentina, Venezuela, they know what is a stable coin and like how to use them. But back in the day when I just started working, pretty much the only thing that I know, and like it's a blessing and a curse. I was buying Bitcoin like in a small amount that my salary back in the day allowed me to do so. I wish I didn't sell, but we were young and there were some mistakes made. However, yeah, like my first exposure to crypto in general was Bitcoin. Then it was ETH, and like till this day, despite all the FUD on like crypto Twitter, ETH is still like very valuable asset, and I will keep holding it. However, for the like payments, it's stable coins. I guess USDC is more like you get a lot of exposure in like USDC, but recently it become more global, and sometimes like right now I can't do it with USDC, but by the nature it's more of the like USDT. To be frank, it's like
Yeah. So Tether on Tron, you said?
Tether on
So
Tron, cheap transactions, but like to be honest, this is my only use case using Tron. I never use it. I don't hold any amount of money there of my personal like savings, investments, nothing except for the part of like sending money to my family, USDT on Tron.
Right. But it's a really, you might not use it for anything else, but it's a really valuable use case. And I wonder, like I'm relatively ill-informed. I don't know much about uh either, certainly not Tron, and not really Tether that well either. Probably partly because I haven't, I'm not uh using that, using it
Yeah,
for in that way, but I should be more familiar with Tether because it's very, it's got like a huge market cap. It seems pretty sort of like fundamentally important. I just have never, and obviously there's been like some, it seems like legal controversies. Like I'm
yeah.
just not, I've never taken the plunge into really understanding any of that. Maybe I should have, but I'm curious if enough to speak on any of that, or on Tron and the utility of that, because I think that has a reputation of, Justin Sun doesn't have like the best reputation in the world. And I don't really, I try not to judge people who I don't really know much about, like judge them off of, just media headlines or tweets or whatever, even if it's tweets of their own. Like I've talked to plenty of people who, off of their tweets, I might have judged them as pretty extremist or, something somewhat negative. But then you have an hour conversation with them and they're actually pretty reasonable. So at the very least, I try to sort of like withhold judgment until I talk to someone. I don't even have to talk to them myself, but listen to them speak, like long form for like an hour or something. That's like sort of the bare minimum to, or read a
Yeah.
book, read a little bit of a book that they've written, but that's less popular. Podcast is sort of like the more popular long form way to get to know someone these days. So, I'm not calling these people out, myself, but I'm just sort of acknowledging that seems to be their reputations. And so I'm curious if you have sort of like an inside perspective, having used this at least for one use case over the years, or if you're just kind of like using it for that thing and you haven't really needed to dig into it yourself. Because like if it stopped working tomorrow, you just use something else.
To be frank, I think speaking about Tron itself, now we have this like cheap transaction with Base, for example. But Base is what, 1.5 year old.
Right.
So before Base, it was pretty much non-existent. You either pay gas on ETH or you're looking for other alternatives. And from all alternatives and from all alternatives with stablecoin like circulation already, it seems like Tron was just an easy option. That's why it gained like even more adoption. I'm not really familiar if there are like any other apps, any other use cases, but if you look at the volumes of Tron, it's like purely stablecoin transactions. With USDC, now it's USDC on Base, but it's again a bit more of the like, I guess, geo restriction. And I think that like Coinbase and Base Team and Circle, they're doing an amazing job in expanding. But again, it's all in the last like year and a half. But I would happily switch to use like USDC. And for example, with the transaction, if I send like USDC from my Coinbase wallet, I don't need to pay gas. This is amazing just for that particular use case that if we talk about this like OG use case, that's how it's done. And I would want to have more options, and I would want to be able to choose like which entity I trust more. If it's like Tether, if it's Circle, if it's, I don't know, like any other stable coin, maybe it's some like yield bearing stable coin. But just as of today, that's the established, I guess, use case for that like USDT on Tron in that particular geographical part. However, I hope that like in the future we do have options. Alternatively, I just want to send stablecoin and don't even think on which chain, on like which exactly stablecoin I'm sending. I just want to send, I don't know, like $10 to that wallet, and this is it. Don't even think how it's done.
Right. And so so it sounds like you would be open to, switching to something like USDC on Base. It would just, you would want to see it sort of working for a bit longer before using it, just because I mean it makes sense. Like you trust, it's easy regardless of the institutions involved or whatever. It's, a little bit easier to trust something that's been around for whatever it's been, a handful of years, versus something that's been around for like one. Is that roughly how you see it? Like you would be open to switching, but it's just like it's been around, it's working so far, so there's like kind of no reason to switch for now?
I would say that for that particular use case, it's just that there is like an infrastructure for that chain, for that asset. I personally use a lot like Base, and to be honest, like half of my own portfolio is already bridged to Base.
Right.
So I am very exposed to USDC, and I'm very exposed to other stable coins like on my own. But it's more comes from like, okay, this is my way of like investing. I can use USDC when I take profits, for example. But yeah, if we speak about this, send money to the family, it is still USDT on Tron.
And when you send that back, does your family hold it in Tether, or like would they convert it? Like, can they buy the things they want to buy, or spend how they want to spend in Tether? Like, is that infrastructure set up, or they have to, before they go and buy stuff, they have to convert it
They
somehow?
have to convert it. Yeah, they have to convert it to like the currency that they use.
Right. And so there's infrastructure basically for them to do that, where there might not be as much for them to get out of USDC on Base. Is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's much.
Okay, that makes sense. All right. So yeah, back to we went on a little tangent, but it's interesting for me. I don't hear of like this. Like, this is like sort of the OG use case, and I don't get to talk to too many people who have been doing it, who are doing it at all, or have been doing it for years. So it's interesting. But how'd you end up in Australia?
I was just working for the company that had like Australian office and Australian founders. So it was again the same thing. I knew that I don't want to stay in the country where I was studying and where I went to school. So whenever I had an opportunity, and I guess a lot of decisions in my life are guided by like, okay, what's the worst thing that might happen if I do this? And
Right.
the answer was like, I can come back. So it was like, I mean, you don't think about Australia as like crypto capital. You frankly don't really know a lot about Australia apart from like spiders and beaches, because this is very like typical. But in reality, it's a beautiful country. Like life is very, very comfortable there. Economy is thriving. The only disadvantage, it's like really far from everything. And essentially, that was one of the reasons why I moved back to Europe.
Yeah, it's a little tough for anyone not from that like Asian time zone. It's hard to
Yeah.
keep up with family and friends and everything. But yeah, it's interesting because Australia, like you said, it seems like I've never been. It seems like a great place though, and large growing economy and everything. And you sort of wonder if and when they might play a role in crypto. Like, I have a friend who is talking about he's thinking of moving to Australia in a couple of years because his I think his soon-to-be wife is basically
Yeah.
from there, and he was like, "Yeah, I might," and he's like really into crypto. He's like, "I might just be able to like go to Australia and sort of run the playbook of a company that's already doing well elsewhere in the world in crypto, and just sort of bring it to Australia." Similarly to how you see like these Chinese tech companies kind
Yeah.
of just like run a US playbook for something that didn't exist there yet, and then it just kind of works because no one else has sort of done it there yet, like catered to that market. And so I wonder if we'll see either something like that in Australia, or international, like some of these global crypto companies start catering there more. But it's just sort of like an interesting to have been pretty deep in crypto for a few years and to have spent them in this place that's pretty not crypto is just kind of like an interesting coincidence. And so when you went back, or when you moved to Paris, you found it to be much more aligned with like, suddenly there's people around you who are into
Oh yeah.
crypto. You're joining Warpcast around this time, and so you sort of have this, you sort of have this digital and physical community all at once, and that must have made it feel just like a lot more. I don't know, maybe normal isn't the right word, but like you started to like sort of get comfortable in working in crypto and not being quite as much of an outlier as you probably felt prior.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. First, Europe and especially Paris has way more crypto companies, and you have the like sense of community that you can hang out physically. Like you get more exposure here, but even to be frank, in Australia, the industry was small, but everyone knew everyone, and there are a few exchanges who has their like APAC offices based in Australia. So it was a lie to say that okay, I was like sitting on the beach with my laptop all by myself. But in saying this, in Europe, also everything is so close to each other. So you have like from Paris to London, it's a what like 2 hour train. You can
Right.
always go to like Amsterdam, where a lot of crypto companies are based as well. Paris on its own has quite a like vibrant ecosystem. So moving here was like, okay, here are my people again, and it's always when you have a like when you share a physical space, especially in the work environment. I just feel, and as much as we all like love remote job, but to me personally, it's like boosting productivity to be in the same space with the people that you work with and just like to hang out with them in real life, because we get a sense that we know people. We get a sense like you can always send a message to ask a question, but nothing beats to be actual like in the presence of each other. First, in the work environment, it's just way easier to solve certain questions or to have certain conversations. But on a human level, like we still need to be around our
I think it cut out there for a second. You said on a human level.
on the human level, still important around like your tribe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's it's interesting. I've sort of gone back and forth on this over the last several years. Like I started in a job that was like intensively in office from like, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or something like that. And then just 4 days a week, Fridays a little less, and then not in the office on weekends usually, sometimes. But like that's, it's a lot of time to be in an office. And so like naturally, got close with my coworkers, but also was sort of like wishing, I could have a little bit more autonomy and ability to, manage my time and where I work and how I work. There's a bit of a FaceTime culture where even if you're done with your work, you sometimes, you couldn't really leave, or it was like a bad look to leave because it's like, gives the impression you're not working hard, which I've always thought was like super dumb. And so like, there's times to work hard, and there's times if you don't have, like, if there's not much to do at that given time, it's like you don't need to be pretending to work or whatever. So anyway, I sort of like craved this ability to work remotely, and then COVID hit, and well, I'd left that job anyway, but shortly after COVID hit, and the whole world sort of went remote, at least for a while, and I really enjoyed that, like as I thought I would, the ability to manage my time. I think for people who may not be, I don't know, for certain people, I think they'd rather just sort of like go to an office and like told what to do or whatever. But like I really enjoyed that. Like I think it's a responsibility, but also an opportunity to have that control over your time. And you can certainly like screw it up, but you can also uh, make it great. And so I really enjoyed that. But then also, now it's been a few years, and like I haven't really worked in person with people in a while. And I definitely miss like sort of the camaraderie of it, and some of the things that you said that are just practically useful, not having to sort of like schedule things or make things work in sync when you're sort of like on these different schedules. Like there's pros and cons. And so I'm still sort of figuring out, what I like best. But I think it's got to be some kind of combination, at least, where there's an in-person component, but also there's a flexibility where like it's not in person to a fault, where people are just like you shouldn't mistake just like sitting in an office as like actually working. And if you're more productive in a certain context working from home for, this day of a week or whatever, then like that's cool too. So I don't know. We'll see where it all
I,
lands. And right now you're basically fully in person.
I totally agree with you, to be frank. And we need to keep in mind that I never worked in like office job that is from 9 to 5. So I was never forced to be sitting in the office in front of my laptop and, like scrolling something, social media, Twitter feed, Farcaster feed.
Right.
But yeah, when you have flexibility and you have this space to come and you can go there like a few times a week, you can work remotely. And essentially, I guess it's me who is choosing if I want to go to the office, or today I will work from home, or tomorrow I will work from London. So having this, I guess, responsibility of the way how you use your own time and which hours you want to be productive, as long as the job is done, I feel like this is the best way. And so far, to me, it's been probably the best way to work when you have this ability to connect with people. But when you really need to like work on something, uh, do some like hard research, you just want to be alone and you need silence. That's why you just stay at home and do things. In saying this, I do like I take a lot of meetings as part of my job, and the majority of the meetings are online.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, and there's certain tasks, like you said, if you need deep research and quiet, like there's certain tasks that definitely orient themselves more towards being in an office setting versus, you know, doing it at home and having your time and space and whatnot. So, anyway, I know. So it's around this time you get to Paris. You're kind of new on Warpcast. This was, I think you said, 2 or 3 years ago. And like 2022, 2023, and at what point, obviously, it's a newer phenomenon in the history of Warpcast and Farcaster, but obviously Hire is a big thing. That's probably how I got to you know interacting with you on Warpcast, was through Hire related
Yeah.
stuff. And so it's been a little over a year of Hire, I guess. And so how did you sort of like get into Hire or exposed to Hire in the first place? What was interesting? And then maybe you could talk about like the creation of Hire Athletics as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think I joined Farcaster. It would be around 2 years now. So, relatively late, but quite early if you zoom out, as a lot of things in life. But with high specifically, so one of my biggest passions in life is art. And I generally really like physical art, but also I love digital art. And earlier on Farcaster, that was the thing that actually kept me active there. I was living my life in Paris, going to all these beautiful museums, and like Crypto Twitter is a very specific place. I didn't feel that I could share this like my experience with art there, so I was doing it on Farcaster, and by doing so, I got a lot of exposure to a lot of different artists. Shout out to Light because he was actually one of the early artists on Farcaster, and I really resonated with like his creative output. So I was following him pretty close, and when channel started, I to be honest, till this day, I host art channel, and we were doing some like AMA early on with people who were active on Farcaster. So Light was one of them, and that was my first interaction with him, even before higher. Ever since I was really paying attention into what he's doing. One day he just wrote that famous cast about hire that I will butcher it, but the idea is that when the price is higher, the memes are funnier, the mood is better, something like this. And it was in the channel, I believe, that was called Higher. So I saw that, wrote some comment, and then it just started from there pretty much. I believe that Martin created a token like the next day and just airdropped to all people who joined that channel. That's how I end up being early for hire.
Yeah, it's awesome. I didn't realize you and Light sort of went back before even before the creation of Hire. And I actually didn't realize that you ran the art channel, but that's got to be like one of the biggest channels and one of the original channels, I think, right?
Yeah. Like I was not the one who created it, but because I was so active there, When these like channel hosts were introduced, I think I just volunteered, and because they saw being active there, I inherited one of the biggest channels on Farcaster, which, by the way, I'm really grateful because it gave me a lot of introductions to like a lot of amazing artists.
That's awesome. I want to talk more about sort of like your experience in digital art and, through the art channel as well. But before, I forget, I would love to hear like the origin story of Higher Athletics and how that came about.
Yeah, so with high athletics, and I guess to be honest, it all like ties pretty well together. Um, with the high athletics, I was doing horse riding professionally for 16, yeah, crazy, 16 years of my life, since I was a kid till I was like a teenager. So sport was always part of my life, big part of. Unfortunately, right now, I just don't have time to get riding, but ever since I hopped, I try to be as active as possible. And one day I was just sitting in front of my laptop, and I think I was reading about someone who ran a marathon. And I was like, damn, this is so cool. Unfortunately, I can't run a marathon just because physically I can't run past like 10 kilometers. But people who can run 42 are like heroes. So, how can I support them? And that's where the whole idea about high athletics came from, because I was like, well, now it's higher, and ideologically, and I don't like this world, but the essence of a person who is aiming higher is an athlete, is someone who wants to improve, who has a certain goal, and they're like working really hard to achieve it. So I was like, wow, these two things can work together. Why don't I create this like community of athletes who are active on Farcaster, and I will try to support them. But it's not only me supporting them, it's like all people who hold higher, they can send it as a like donation to the multisig, and then from that multisig we can pay the like race entry fees, marathon entry fees, just like support people who are keen to do some sort of like sport activity. That's how originally it spin off. And yeah, I believe right now we sponsored around like 30 people who like ran marathons, a few teams. It was like soccer team, basketball team. We did a few people who are doing like bike races. So yeah, it's been pretty amazing ever since, to be honest.
And so people basically will like request to be sponsored by Higher Athletics, and then you basically are collecting a multi-sig of Higher that from donations or whatever else it might be, and then you can go and um, basically sponsor these athletes. As like athletic sponsorships is like not a new concept. Like you see these bikers or race car drivers or whatever, like the soccer jerseys. There's always like a sort of a sponsor on it, and so like at a smaller scale, like obviously we're not talking about the Premier League here or something, but like at a smaller scale, you guys are basically sponsoring athletes using higher donations.
Yeah. Pretty much people who willing to support this and hire that multi-sig. There are a few signers. I'm one of them, and the request to get the sponsorship, there is a like cap, and I believe we agreed that it's like 200 USD per person, so we can sponsor more. But this person, the athlete, should be active forecast to provide the proof of like sign up for the race or any other activity that they're doing, and then be willing to like post about it, tag higher, and if they want to have merch, like we can send the t-shirt or like stickers. It could be really custom. To be honest, it's not really something strict, but yeah, we got like football jerseys, just running t-shirts. We did a few like run clubs IRL here in Paris. We did one at SCC. I know that folks did it in New York. People are doing it in London. So it created this like mixture of like online and offline activities. But in the essence, I feel like it's very net positive thing.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm excited to see what's what's in store for Hire this year, for Hire Athletics this year. It's just it's an awesome community of people. It definitely made me more. I mean, I've been I've been on Farcaster for a while. I didn't really get into Hire until the summer of this year, so around June or July maybe, and it's definitely like I like to think I probably would have remained pretty active on Farcaster regardless. I've been interested in it sort of since day one and enjoying it, and now I've got a bigger following there than on Twitter, which is compelling to make it worth it, to go and post and be active and everything. And so and generally like I'm sort of I believe that there will be decentralized, so a decentralized social network layer. Do I know whether or not it'll be Farcaster? I don't. But out of all of the experiments that have come out, there's been a lot of decentralized social experiments that sort of have risen and fallen pretty sharply and pretty quickly over the last 2-3 years that I've been sort of paying attention. Maybe it's probably been more than that, 4 or 5 years. And Farcaster has sort of slowly, more deliberately grown over whatever it's been now, 3 years, and obviously well funded, great team. I think an awesome early community of people, in the network and posting, like lots of great founders and everything. And so I'm as I think it has as good of a chance as anything else or better that anything that exists today of sort of becoming that decentralized social network. And you got to take some risks and rewards or whatever. Like there's a chance that it could kind of not be a thing in some number of years, but obviously I wouldn't be doing this podcast among other things if I didn't think that it was a good place to be spending time, and if I wasn't enjoying spending time there over the last couple of years. So anyway, maybe we can circle back to. I actually would love to hear about, like you mentioned, being pretty serious with horses from a young age. I'm just curious to hear, like, you don't need to walk through everything, but like that's a pretty unusual like childhood and adolescence and everything. I'm curious, like, sort of what that was like, how it's impacted you. Obviously, the general sort of like embrace of the athlete's mindset has stuck with you, but beyond that, how was that as, like, sounds like sort of a pretty serious and also like quite ambitious childhood.
I mean, for sure. And actually, thank you for this question. I don't really have an opportunity to talk about it like that much as an adult, but that's definitely like big part of my life. And this is still till this day when I have a chance to ride a horse. This is just like my biggest joy. So it started when I was around, like, I think 4 years old, and I was just with my parents in the park, and there was a pony, and me as a young kid, I was so excited about the pony. So I would, like, so I'm not even sure if they do it in US, but you can, as a kid, ride a pony with a person. They will walk with you, just like, a loop in the park. So that was what I was doing, but then the pony got scared, and it kind of ran faster than the pony should. But I didn't get scared and didn't fall off the pony, and remained calm and keep riding the pony. So the person who was like organizing this whole experience, they're like, "Oh, this girl would be a professional horse rider." Maybe as a young kid, this stuck with me ever since. I was begging my parents to bring me to the, like, stables whenever they have an occasion. Luckily, we were living not that far from like pretty big stables. So yeah, when I was doing school, I was also going, I believe, like 3 times per week to my horse riding lessons. And when you were a kid, it's ponies. When I was an adult, I think around like 12 or 13, I mean, adult, teenager. When you become a teenager, you can ride a horse just because now you're taller. So I just really loved it. And I'm really grateful for my parents to allow me doing this and let me spend like so much time with horses, because it really, when you are growing up, it really teaches you, apart from like ambition as a like sports goals, and this is the whole other topic, but this is the only sport where you are interacting with an animal. And as a young kid, as a teenager, you learn to take care of another animal, and you learn to be really responsible of the animal, because if you don't do it, nobody will do it. So this option of like having a choice, you basically don't have a choice. And also, I mean, horses are amazing animals, very kind, very intelligent. So just interacting with them on a regular basis is something that you get a lot of like pure joy. And every person who has like a cat or a dog, they're obsessed with their animal. I'm the same way, just like obsessed with horses. But yeah, growing up and like when I start to compete on like pretty serious level, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of dedication, it takes certain mindset. When you know that you need to be patient, you do things over and over. And I did dressage. It's like something that takes a lot of passion. It looks effortless if you look at it as a just like regular person, and look at the competition, but it's a very, very hard work, and hard work physically as a human, but also hard work of communicating with an animal.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I never have thought of the fact that it's like the only sport that it's interacting with an animal, and also the points about like learning to be responsible for, another animal from a very young age is like obviously you could sort of be the primary responsible person for, your dog as a kid. Usually it's like the parents or whatever, but sort of a unique opportunity in that way, and just sounds like um, a very beneficial experience basically that you had, and but also demanding as well, but beneficial for all of those reasons that you mentioned. And so what particular, like, what were the competitions? Was it like racing or like hurdles? I don't even know like all of the various options, but what were you competing at?
So I was competing in dressage. It's an Olympic sport. So it's where you look at horses and the rider, and it looks like they're dancing.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah, I think we will need to find some like videos and add it to the podcast in case people know what it is.
So, and it's what's called dressage, you said?
Yeah.
And did you always know, like, was that always the thing that you were interested in, or did you try like racing or anything
Yeah,
else and land on that as your favorite?
I did jumping as well, but then and because I mean, basically I grew up with it, so I did all sorts of different things. But then eventually you will get either into dressage or like jumping, and jumping is a bit more like adrenaline powered, and
Right.
dressage is more of the like patient and beautiful, if I might say. So that was something that I was more gravitating towards, and I just liked it, to be honest.
Yeah, it seems like more of a almost more of like an art. Do you think
Yeah.
that translated at all to your interest in art, like later as you sort of stopped with got like less intense with the horses, or was art something you were always sort of interested in separately?
I think the way how my parents raised me, I was always exposed to art, to like great literature. They took me to theaters, art galleries when we were traveling. As a kid, I was not like really embracing it in the moment, and I didn't want to go with them all the time. But just by being exposed and like know that this is something that exists, it plants some seed in your like young head. And finally, when as an adult you start to like, have your own hobbies, I just enjoyed going to museums and like spending time in presence of these like great paintings. So that's how initially I understood that, okay, this brings me a lot of joy, this brings me a lot of new thoughts, and this is an experience that I'm trying to do more. And then it translated to like digital as well.
Right. And so maybe in closing, I'm curious to hear if you have anything with the art channel that's either happened to date or that you might have in mind for the future, that like obviously people have different, views of what channels are useful for or could be useful for. But it sounds like so you weren't, you didn't make the art channel and haven't been the head of it since the beginning, but it's been a little while now, and you mentioned like sort of it's led to some kind of interesting things. I'm curious to hear like sort of how that's been and how it's sort of helped your experience with digital art.
Oh, I have an amazing example of like a very, very interesting thing that happened in a way due to my love to art, especially art on Farcaster art channel. So I just came back from Morocco and I was in Marrakesh just for holidays to get some sun because winter in Europe is generally miserable. So I was there and Rodeo just like got this crazy exposure, and I posted a picture there, and I was like, this was just a picture of Marrakesh, and one of the people from
This is
Fark
a picture of what?
Marrakesh, just like
Okay,
photo,
okay.
and one of the people who I knew podcast, and he's a very art collector. He shared with me a place in Marrakesh. It's a hotel, like traditional riad, and that riad has a absolutely insane collection of digital art. I wouldn't know about this place like ever. You really, even if you Google, you probably wouldn't be able to like find it on the internet. But this guy shared that amazing hotel with me. So when I was in Marrakesh, I went to visit that hotel. I got a very, very like nice excursion through all different art. And we are talking, there was like CryptoPunks, there is the whole room of like meridians. There is really like what you can think of like gen art that would be there. So had a really amazing tour from the staff, had an amazing lunch there, had amazing conversations with like people who actually stay there, because it was just such a hidden gem in Marrakesh. I couldn't even think that this exists. But if you think about it, how I got exposed to this, it's like thanks for us, thanks for that person with really met through art and the passion to like collecting digital art.
Yeah, it's I think we're still, at least from my perspective, so early in all of this, whether it's you talk about crypto at large, digital
Yeah,
art, Farcaster, any of these sorts of things. And so to be running the art channel, given your interest, I think that should be pretty interesting in the years to come. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot more stories, maybe not exactly like that one, but really interesting things that happen sort of serendipitously by just being active on Farcaster and in the art channel and continuing to sort of like do things there and in public. So anyway, I know we're coming up on time, but it's been a awesome conversation. Awesome getting to finally catch up, long form audio after at least a couple of years, sort of, going back and forth on the feed. Is there anything else, before we wrap up that is top of mind that you wanted to mention or leave people with, or you think we pretty much covered it?
no, Jake, thank you so much for the conversation. I enjoyed it so much, and really you asked me a really, really good question that I just had the best time answering, to be honest.
Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed it as well, and appreciate your appreciation and taking the time to come on in the first place. And I will look forward to seeing you on the feed, and hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely, we will.